Hello and welcome to Fit Health OF News, bringing you all the latest in health, fitness, and relationships from across the country. On this week's episode, we're going to update you on the measles, bird flu, and influenza. We're also going to talk about the latest research on marijuana, as well as how sex impacts sleep quality. And we're going to end on a top 5 list. Okay, let's get started. Our lead story tonight in current events is a raw pet food maker out of California is recalling pet food due to concerns over the bird flu. They serve raw products, so basically uncooked. So there's a concern that it could spread the bird flu to cats, and a few cats have actually apparently caught the virus. Human cases remain pretty sporadic, so we're not really too concerned about human transmission. However, a lot of birds are dying over this, and when we're serving raw food that's not cooked, there's a bigger risk of catching it. So they are recalling this pet food so that there isn't a more concern over pets catching this virus. As we said last week, human cases are pretty sporadic. We're still not talking about any sort of large numbers. And one study found that older adults have actually tend to have stronger immunity to the bird flu because of the fact that they've been able to build up immunity and antibodies to similar viruses over their lifetime. They've had more flu seasons in their lifetime, so they've been able to build up antibodies to similar viruses and tend to have more immunity to the bird flu as a result. In other news, the CDC has classified this year's flu season as high severity. However, flu numbers have been trending down over the last couple of weeks. So we're still watching out for the flu, but we are seeing a downtrend in those metrics that the CDC uses. However, measles are still trending up. As of March 13, 2025, there's been a total of 301 confirmed measles cases reported by 15 jurisdictions. In other news, Parkinson's disease, the second most common neurodegenerative disease, is expected to affect 25 million people by 2050. This is what one study warns, and this would represent a 112% increase compared to the numbers in 2021. In other news, another news organization has put out 4 ways to cope if you feel stressed out by current events. There's a lot going on in the world between health and government and everything else. So if you are feeling stressed by anything you're seeing in the news, here are a few things to do to help reduce that stress. Number one is set a time limit for yourself. Only go on and look at this kind of stuff for a time limit, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, and then go away from it. Another tip is to set boundaries for yourself, maybe no news after a certain time or avoiding trolls, things like that. Another tip is to focus on what you can control. Um, you know, how often you're going out of the house or how often you're spending time outdoors, the type of how much sleep you're getting, the quality of your diet. Focus on the things you can control and not what you can't. And a final tip is don't be afraid to mute content that isn't helpful for you or to unfollow creators or even friends that are posting things that are making you stressed or more upset. Our lead story tonight in health is about marijuana. A lot of people have switched over to marijuana from alcohol in the states where it's become legal for recreational use. They say benefits are that doesn't give you a hangover, you can still work out, and it doesn't give you the same negative health consequences. However, a recent study found that cannabis users younger than age 50 were as much as, or excuse me, over 6 times as likely to suffer a heart attack compared to non-users. So before we tout these health benefits, we need to be careful and really examine, how healthy this in fact is for us. And ask ourselves the question, hey, is this really healthy or do we just think it is? Because after all, it is a mind-altering substance. All right, in other news, microplastics are in the news again because of their potential to create drug-resistant bacteria. Microplastics are all over their environment at this point. They're in the rain, they're in the microenvironment, they're in the oceans. And when a bacteria attaches to a surface, it can create like a biofilm, which is like a sticky substance that acts like a shield. But when bacteria attaches to microplastic, it creates a really, really strong shield, thus creating like an antibiotic resistant bacteria, because it's really hard for, like medications to get through that shield. All right. On other news, a Wall Street Journal asked the question: are emulsifiers causing illnesses? And emulsifiers are the things that we add to food to improve texture. Um, and they found that emulsifiers have been linked to some health risks like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, inflammation. And they found that you can reduce your risk by avoiding ultra processed foods, by practicing moderation and by eating the most whole foods that you possibly can. All right. In other news, dry air exposure has been linked to dehydrated and inflamed airways. A lot of times when we turn the heat on or we have the air really dry, we can feel that effect on our sinuses, but we don't really know what's going on. But this study from John Hopkins Medicine, or report by John Hopkins Medicine, explained that dry air can actually be harmful, just like dirty air or polluted air. So I found that very interesting. Our lead story tonight is about how to quit smoking. Researchers found that the combination of transcranial direct current stimulation and aerobic exercise could actually help to curb cravings. More research is needed. However, this is a good start, and they are seeing some reduction in cravings with this treatment. We'll stay tuned and see if this treatment develops further. In other news, uncertainty is found to increase the way that we perceive pain in the brain. Researchers designed an experiment where they would have participants predict whether a warm or cold sensation would come. But sometimes they would send both a warm and cold sensation, and this would kind of trigger a sensation of burning. It's basically a phenomenon known as the thermal grill illusion. So basically, the researchers combined this with brain imaging and computer modeling so they could see everything that was going on. And the results of the experiment showed that uncertainty, not just expectation, played a role in how we experience pain. So knowing this, when we go to our our personal trainer or physical therapist or doctor, given this information, we should ask them about what's going to happen that day. Like ask them, hey, what kind of exercise are we going to do? What kind of treatment are we going to do today? Because by knowing in advance, it could help us to experience the experience with less pain and more pleasure. Another study found that nature exposure can also alleviate pain and make us experience it, better. So by working out outdoors or, experiencing unpleasant things like that outdoors, it can make it a more pleasant experience for us as well. Our lead story tonight in relationships: Tiger Woods has been dating Vanessa Trump for several months. However, the story is just now making the news. And Pete Davidson is also in a new relationship, but it's not with Ariana or Kim or anyone else like that that's extremely famous. He is now dating a non celebrity, and we wish him well. In other news, one study asked the question: can sex help you sleep better? And this is either solo sex, meaning masturbation, or sex with a partner. And the study found that sex can improve sleep, especially if you have an orgasm. The participants in the study had a higher sleep efficiency. They spent less time awake at night, basically waking up throughout the night. They were able to sleep longer, and they were motivated and ready to be energized and work the next day if they had sex with a partner or masturbated before they went to bed. So there's a benefit. And in other news, basically another article by NBC News talked about how people are starting to have relationships with chatbot robots. More and more people are starting to have real relationships, not real life, real relationships, whether friendship or romantic relationships with chatbots. And An NBC News article interviewed one woman who said she runs two Facebook groups, which collectively have 1,700 members for people who have developed similar relationships with chatbots. For this week's top 5 list, we polled both men and women to get an idea of the top 5 things that women get wrong about men most often. And we found a lot of consensus here, but these were the 5 biggest themes that came out. All right, number 5, that they want to sleep with just every woman or any woman that they can find. And the poll results showed that this just isn't true. Um, Time after time after time, as we read these polls, we saw women saying, "Hey, you know, a lot of men will sleep with just about anyone they can," and men saying, "Hey, that women think this and it's not true." All right, number 4, that they don't want love or companionship, just sex. Time and time again throughout these polls, we saw men saying that they wanted relationships, and we saw women saying that they didn't think men wanted relationships, which big disconnect there. All right. Number 3, that they don't have societal standards of their own. We saw time and time again men talking about the standards that they have in society, whether it's height, strength, making a certain amount of money, driving a certain car, or having a big house or whatever. We also saw women talking about their standards in society, beauty standards, education standards, success standards, things like that. And women, however, were saying that they don't think men have the same, but we didn't see men saying that they don't think women have the same. So there was an interesting disconnect there as well. Number 2, that they lie and cheat all the time and can't be trusted. You know, the whole all men cheat thing. Uh, you know, I saw a poll recently that said that 20% of men have basically cheat in relationships, while 13% of women. So the numbers are more for men, but it's not this big vast difference that we tend to think. All right, and number 1, that they don't have the same feelings as women. Now that's one thing I overwhelmingly noticed in the poll, is that that women tend to think that men don't have the same feelings: anxious, depressed, happy, sad, mad, glad, all of it. And throughout the polls, I noticed the theme that they absolutely do. All right. Well, I hope that helps. See you next week.